D, also known as D the Game, also known as the fourth letter in the alphabet, is a first-person horror adventure game and door-fingering simulator developed by Warp Studios and released in 1995 for the 3DO, PC, PlayStation 1, and Sega Saturn. I do have to put a disclaimer here. This D isn't very long. A playthrough will probably only take an hour or so depending on how well you grasp its puzzles, and that means I can't really show anything that isn't at least a mild spoiler. So if you have any interest in playing this game for yourself, maybe do that and come back to this video if you'd like. The story you are about to be told is real. It is the story of the game known simply as D. The names have not been changed to protect the innocent. D opens in Los Angeles in 1997, only 3 years after O.J. Simpson fled police in a white Bronco after being charged with the murder of his ex-wife Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. A doctor by the name of Richard Harris has also allegedly murdered a bunch of people and taken several hostages in the hospital where he works. His daughter, Laura Harris, arrives at the scene and wanders into the hospital completely unhindered. She is drawn into a portal and finds herself locked in a strange place that does not appear to be said hospital. Now, in typical adventure game fashion, she needs to meander around, solving puzzles and avoiding traps so she can confront her father and figure out why he allegedly did that stuff. Fuck. It's a decent setup, and I respect that it gets out of the way. Visually, D holds up pretty well thanks to the fact that it's not actually rendering 3D in real time. Instead, gameplay is a series of still screenshots stitched together with pre-rendered cutscenes much like a tightly fitting glove. Sort of like Myst, but with fairly simple puzzles, and that may sound like an insult, but I want to frame it as what it is because I actually think it's done really well. The atmosphere that the developers were able to create with a presentation this simple is really surprising. The background music is subdued and ambient. It's a bassy drone like a howling wind, and it's complemented with little audio flourishes like when you open a door or solve a puzzle. Even switching between items in the inventory has a spooky sound cue, and it reminds me a lot of Blood Omen, which came out a year and a half later. It's effective sound design, though what you'll be hearing most is the main character's name.
Laura. 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 This is your father.
This is CNN.
Wait.
Speaking of Laura, as one of only 2 characters in the story, and despite the fact that she almost never speaks, I actually like her a lot as a character. Obviously it's a game and we are controlling Laura, but it's nice that she still feels like she has at least a little of her own personality. Like early on, you'll come across this wall of spikes that rushes at her. She's obviously shaken, and if you try to get her to walk into it again, it doesn't just play the same video like you might expect in most adventure games. Instead, she thinks about it before shaking her head and backing away. Then sometimes she'll stumble across a dead body and look at it the way I look at a house centipede, and I realize that maybe I just see a kindred spirit in a character who totally shuts down when they aren't sure how they're supposed to react. Like Myst, D is commonly classified as a horror game, but that label might be overselling it. It's got a spooky ambience that I really enjoyed, but there aren't any monsters or jump scares, and like a rich pedophile, the main character's never really in any danger. That's nice because the game fully expects you to play through it in its entirety in one sitting. I mentioned that you could get through it in a couple of hours, but there's actually a built-in 2-hour time limit, and while you can pause the game, you cannot actually save it. That means if you run out of time or if you just have to stop playing for some reason, you'll have to start again from the very beginning, and that 2 hours is pretty generous if you already know what you're doing, but it can add a lot of tension to your first playthrough. You might think you can avoid that if you're emulating the game, but you'll need to be careful with your quick saves. I'm not totally sure why, but if I saved while I was standing still, loading that save would cause the game to be totally unresponsive, and I'd have to start the whole thing over. Now, I've put a lot of praise on the game so far, so let's talk about the not so great. Because the game is made of cutscenes and designed to be played on a controller, you can't really explore the hospital? I'm pretty sure we're in some kind of castle. Movement works on a series of nodes, and you pick which node you want to go to next by turning left and right. This means the rooms themselves are incredibly simple to navigate, and that might sound like a good thing, but it results in very little interactivity or environmental storytelling. Outside of a few puzzles, there's no on-screen cursor to do things like click a book or a drawer or a painting. You'll never get additional context or even flavor text from Laura, and it's a real missed opportunity. Instead, when you press forward, Laura will walk forward, or if there's something on screen that can be interacted with, Laura will do that. So of course, that means there can only be one thing on a screen at a time. In a handful of cases, you can also try to use an item, but if it's not relevant, it just does nothing. On top of the rooms being barren and simple, the walking speed harkens back to that chase in a white Bronco because it is also excruciatingly slow. There's an argument to be made that it sets the pace and tone and builds tension, but if you're going through areas you've already completed or you have to start over, it can be painful. Puzzle design is obviously an incredibly complex concept, but the puzzles in D are often so simple that I couldn't count most of them as puzzles at all. I realize that'll be a very subjective criticism, but when you're in a room with a barrel that says, "I need a handle," and then you find a handle, putting the handle on the barrel doesn't really feel like you've solved anything. The times I did struggle were generally because I totally misinterpreted a clue rather than a difficulty in the puzzle itself. As an example, early on you'll find a slip of paper with 2 numbers on it, and like the smooth brain that I am, I took those numbers to the nearby puzzle box with 2 numbers on the front of it. You know, like a moron. After fumbling around with those dials for longer than I'd care to admit, I found out that I was actually supposed to go upstairs and open 2 drawers on a dresser in the order of those numbers to get a key. I felt silly, but when you do come across a puzzle that stumps you, that's okay because Laura comes equipped with a little compact mirror that will give you a hint on where you need to go next, and you can use it 3 times before it breaks. It's a considerate bit of game design from an era before the time of online walkthroughs, and personally, I'm not really a huge fan of puzzle games anyway, so I didn't mind the simplicity, but if you are a puzzle person, I wouldn't want you to go in thinking you were getting a Resident Evil flavored version of Professor Layton. My only real problem with the gameplay was in the form of the one and only quick time event in the game, where you have to dodge this suit of armor swinging a sword at you, and for whatever reason I could not get it to register my inputs correctly. I failed this over and over until I slowed the emulation down to like 10 frames a second, and then it finally worked for some reason. I guess the game just likes to do things slowly. Wait, you could move that fast the whole time? I suppose it's time to talk about the story, but I'll keep things brief. You know the dance, go to the time on screen if you want to avoid spoilers. It might surprise you to know that this 2-hour game is pretty light on story. As Laura is exploring, she'll come across these beetles that trigger flashbacks, but there's no dialogue and they don't tell you very much. And at the same time, her father keeps yelling at her to get out of the hospital and save herself, but like my own kids, she ignores him completely.
Laura. 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 What are you doing? Go back. Now. Laura, you can't stop me. Leave the hospital. Quickly. If you do not, you'll never be able to return to your own world. Do you understand, Laura? Quickly!
Finding her father at the top of a stone tower, he reveals their family's dark secret. They are the descendants of Dracula. Yeah, I didn't really see that one coming. I guess it should have been obvious from the D, but there wasn't really a lot else pointing towards that over the course of the story. Like, there wasn't any religious iconography or anything around to make me think that vampires were in play here. Obviously, I know vampires and religion aren't necessarily the same thing, but at least when I think of vampires, I also kind of think of crosses. At some point in their lives, everyone in their family goes crazy and starts eating people. Laura did this to her mother years ago. These are the visions she's been experiencing, but somehow her father erased that memory. He wasn't a vampire then, though, so I guess that maybe that's just a power that some doctors have. Soon, he will fully transform into a vampire and eat Laura, so she has a choice. If she walks towards her father, the game ends and credits roll over the sound of her body being eaten. If she uses the pistol instead, he confesses that he allowed the transformation to progress on purpose because he was curious what would happen, and thanks Laura for shooting him.
Thank you. I love you. My last wish is that...
I love it. And there's a third ending if you've found all 4 beetles, which is the same scene, but apparently you can hear a baby crying in the background. I didn't get to see that one because I couldn't get the 4th beetle to spawn, so I'll just have to believe whatever I read on the internet like usual. This story is kind of lame if we're being honest. Considering the year the game was made and its length, and it being the first real showing for the developer, I don't mind it, but I can't pretend it's great either. I guess it feels like the narrative just wasn't really a focus of the game's development, and maybe the team just wanted to explore what was possible in the interactive medium and with this new technology, but it's still a letdown because I was enjoying the gameplay quite a bit up until the end, and I am someone who really cares more about the narrative in games. Overall, I can still recommend it today if you have an interest in the history of games, or if you're interested in seeing an early example of the horror genre and don't really mind some simple mechanics. Some people used to look at console games like this or BioShock and say that they were dumbed down for the peasants, but I enjoyed my time with D way more than the hours I spent slogging through Myst. It won't blow your socks off or keep you up all night with its creeping dread, but it's still cool and inspiring to see what can be done with such limited resources. If you'd like to give it a shot, you can legally purchase a copy through GOG for $6 or get it on sale for $3, but if you choose to go that route, I do have to warn you that the game has these weird interlaced black lines. They kind of look like a shitty CRT filter, and as far as I can tell, there's no way to get rid of them, so I instead chose to go with the PlayStation version where things were a little smoother. There are 2 sort of sequels that I'll look forward to checking out sometime in the future, one of which is D2, and I bring that up because that game was recommended by Oblivious Ben in a comment on my review of The Thing. It's really the reason I gave this game a chance, because I have a terrible compulsion to start a series from the beginning even if I don't really want to play the first game, but I'm glad I did. Let me know about any other good games I should try, I guess. I've got a pretty big backlog, but it could always be bigger. If you made it this far, thanks for checking out the video. I genuinely appreciate every one of you. Take care of yourself, and as always, thanks for watching. Later.